Georgie girl's having a good look at this guitar. Make sure she approves of it. Inside it is a guitar formerly owned by Rory Gallagher. No, you can't eat the plastic off it. No, that's enough. I think I'm going to let you go now and put the case away. Thank you. What we have here is a very personalised Telecaster. I've only one thing to do to it, and that's to look at this problem on the neck. It looks like the truss rod has come through the back of the neck, and I am not hopeful that there's a repair for it, unfortunately. So I'm going to take the neck off now and have a closer look. Some ripe colours there. There's dark green, and there's red, and there's a sort of yellow, but I believe the owner thinks it was originally black, maybe. But it looks like it was a multicoloured rainbow. Very unusual. But then again, it's been around for a long time, this guitar. So that's the colour beneath the plate, but that means nothing too, because it could be any number of colours. It's going into the darkness here, so yeah, I do see some black there. So I've taken off the screws and I'm going to take off the neck. The old faithful matchsticks which stop the neck from moving about. I'm going to keep them in because it's a great playing guitar, I understand. They are a bit loose, but I'm not going to move them unless I have to. I took the neck off. It's on temporary again. No point showing you taking the neck off, because taking the neck off is bloody simple. Bad news is the truss rod's doing nothing. Tight or loose, it makes no difference. It doesn't change the neck. So the truss rod's either jammed solid or kaput on this neck. So that could be part of the problem, because I can't look through wood, so it's a guesswork. Right. So what I did do is, when I loosened the truss rod as much as possible, I put the clamp on and tried to tighten it. I didn't want to over tighten because I didn't want to damage the neck, and it moved not an inch, not an iota. I then tried to tighten it as tight as possible, and it didn't move an inch either. So that bulge is not going to move unless I scrape it out, maybe, and clean it out, maybe, and try to reshape it back down again. But that is, yeah, see the way the crack's spreading? So we have limited choices here. We can't have a new neck, can't take the fretboard off because you ruin the shape, you ruin this guitar. It's 1963 Telecaster. It's been modified quite a bit and changed quite a bit, but that's what happens with Telecasters because they're so reliable. So the options we have are take the fretboard off. I don't think is an option. The other option is to replace the neck, which is bloody useless anyway. The third option is clean out that crack. The good thing about the truss rod not working is it doesn't matter how much glue I put in there, but clean out that crack and try to glue it back down again. And if I can't get it down at any sort of value, then we'll just have to gloss over it, shape that down so it's the same shape as the rest of the neck, and then finish it that way with a crack, but it's a gloss on finish instead of a crack. But there's no guarantee that it's not going to spread, you know. So I'm a very bad angle. So I'll talk to the owner and see what he thinks about this. But as you can see, that it's discolored here. I feel that the truss rod has damaged it from inside, but I don't know. But I think it's been played while it's been cracked, so the dirt of your hands and maybe wood chips and everything's it's gone down inside it. So I didn't want to overpress, but when I clean it out a bit and glue it, I'll have to put a bit of pressure on to see what happens, but not too much. So I have put a lot of thought into this Telecaster, 1963 Telecaster. The easiest way to do this was to stuff that full of epoxy resin and super glue. but it would go through. I'm convinced it would go through right through to the truss rod and seal the truss rod, and the truss rod would never move again. The owner would accept that if the guitar was set up to the way he wants it. He's a professional guitarist, and this is his precious guitar. But I'm pretty sure that, I don't know whether the owner will allow me to show one of his videos in this, but he is a pretty popular and hard rock and roll. I don't want to put him into a category, but he uses this guitar on stage, and he uses it with extreme energy, put it like that. So putting epoxy resin in there and stuffing it full of super glue would be the strongest thing to do this. But in speaking to him, I think he's going to use this for in-studio work more than on the road work, because with all the hard use that this gets, that crack, which isn't the wrong way. If it had been cracked that way, well, it would still be the same thing. I'd be advising him to use it for the studio only. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to repair the superficiality of the crack and seal it. The crack is higher on this side and lower on this side. It made me think that maybe the truss rod had pushed it up through. But having watched the professional guitarist perform, I see that he holds it there, and when he moves about the stage in quite a violent manner, that's probably what caused this, is the stress of the constant moving back of the body and stuff like that there. So this very valuable Telecaster 1963 is not just valuable in terms, I don't know what it'd be worth in terms of money, but it's valuable in terms of sound for the owner. So I'm going to try to keep the truss rod free. Yes, I live dangerously by teasing females. Let me just feel that now. That feels very good. I'm actually quite pleased with that. So what I'm going to use now is some 2000 sandpaper. I'm not going to use it wet and dry because I don't want water getting in there. Are we still recording? Yeah, I'm going to use 2000 sandpaper just to give it an ultra smooth finish. And I don't think we're going to hide this. I don't think there's any way we can hide this. If I put wood filler in, we could hide it, but wood filler won't bind the two edges together the way they need to be bounded. Anyway, so wood filler's no good. And if I put epoxy resin in deeper, yes, I could put wood filler on top. But the problem is with putting it in deeper is then you're going to end up with the truss rod sealed. Well, the potential for the truss rod to be sealed. Right, now that's it cleaned out a bit. Let's use a little hard line brush here. I can't see anymore. There we go, right there. Right, so all that work about that feels still smooth, but the crack now needs to be sealed. Am I breathing? I'm leaning down. I'm over the top of this. Hopefully you can see. Right, okay, now's the time to mix up the epoxy and the wood chips, so I'll do that. Oh, it would be lovely just to splash it all in there and seal the neck, but that would be wrong. So I'm just using, well, I should say just using, but this Gorilla epoxy is super strong. So peel off the ends of the epoxy. Squeeze both parts in. So I'll do a little mixture there of both, and a little bit more of the left side than the right side. That's about all I'm going to need. Right, so I pull the plunger out a bit. So I'm going to let that sit for a second before I put it in. And rather than mix the wood chips in, I've had a rethink. I'm going to put the epoxy in and then put the wood chips on top. The thinking behind that, wood dust on top, the thinking behind that is that if you mix it up with the epoxy, then you may not be able to stain it as easily. But maybe my thinking is completely crazy on the whole thing. Because the best thing to do would be put the epoxy in and then some wood fillers on, because then you get a smoother finish. I'm talking to myself by the same time as doing this, by the way. I just feel I'm just taking that away, because that was just me. So I'm letting this sit a second or so. It's not running, but I want it to be running less even. Okay, so let's just do this now. I'm going to put it in there. At the very ends, I'm going to push it in a bit, right? At the very ends, because you can't get in there, right? Can't get in there because of and it won't sink to the bottom if I force it in. But at least it might stop the crack. This is no guarantee that the crack will stop, right? Let's just see. Come on, heal up a bit. Okay. Do you know, the more I think of this, the more I think that I'm mad for even trying to match it up. I think that I think I'm going to actually let it sit like this and dry up. I don't want too much on there. I don't want too much on the guitar. I'm going to let it dry up. Hopefully it won't sink in too far. This looks pretty self-defeating if I'm taking off the glue, but I'm not taking the stuff off in the crack. Let's just see. Move that. Well, not move that. Right, okay. I take off as much with this as I can and let that dry, and then sandpaper will take off the rest, and then I'll put another little touch of epoxy to bring it up level, and I'll let the owner tell me, because even we'll see. Now, you have to know when to stop, and I'm stopping now. Let me bring this camera down to let you see it closer from different 3D angles. Where are we? There we are. You can see the epoxy has a couple of little holes there, but I'm not going to overplay my hand on this. It might not actually be holes. It might just be a reflection of the light. I'm going to let that sit now because it's not sinking down too far. I don't want it to sink down as far as the truss rod. So if I let that sit like that, I'm going to give it an hour. I've turned it round so that the epoxy won't flow down. I doubt it very much it will, but I'm just being ultra cautious. Well, here we are again. I need to put a thin line of epoxy resin. At the moment, and I don't think you can see this, but at the moment the crack is still sitting slightly below, and that's deliberate because there was a consideration I was giving towards putting wood filler in. But on speaking to the owner today, realised that strength is more important than getting this thing to, perfect, because it's never going to look perfect. But what I'm trying to do now is fill up that line, fill up that crack. Georgie girl, you're not going to like the smell of this, I tell you. That's the only reason I'm letting you near this, because I know you'll be you'll hate it, and I'm 100% right. She's just backed off big time whenever she stuck her nose up close to it. So I didn't have to go crazy and chastise her, because I knew she would be. The smell is horrible. Right, okay, so that's the line filled. Now, that's that line filled, right? This can go away now. And what I'm going to do is the same almost as last time, except, oops, I deliberately have the guitar leaning not quite on flat. I have it leaning that way because the crack is slightly this side. Or some of the epoxy glue. It'll give me less to scrape away whenever I have to scrape this away. And so I'm not even trying to get it all off. I'm just getting off enough because the razor blade will take off the rest. Some ways there's very little to see, but I have put another layer of epoxy resin in the crack, and that brought the layer up hopefully just above the wood, and it won't sink down any further into the guitar because the first layer of epoxy will stop that. So whenever this dries in 2 days, I will come back and I will gently scrape away the hard resin till we get down to the wood. Then I'll sand it and then stain it. What you see here is a shiny solid layer of epoxy. It's my intention now to bring that shininess all away and just leave the epoxy in the crack. Okay, I'm going to use a very sharp, brand new blade and scrape away. Okay, and gently scrape away. Give it a I might be repeating myself, but really there's no satisfactory way to fix this. There's no way that you could say I'm invisible repair, this is solid as the original, because it's cracked the wrong way. If it had been cracked that way, I could have put wood in and taken the fretboard off it all. So maybe I'm making excuses, but I don't think so. I think that this is the only way you could have done it. Now it feels as smooth as a baby's bottom. Now I'm going to tilt the guitar a little bit this way so that the super glue doesn't run. And get the super glue out of the fridge, because I keep the super glue in the fridge. I'm not going to put the super glue directly onto the guitar. I'm going to put the super glue onto a sheet beside the guitar and use the blade and just dip it. Because the super glue will soak in more deeply than the epoxy. I did say that in the previous video, didn't I? Didn't I? I was hoping the epoxy would sink in, but this was a 60-year-old guitar. Am I repeating myself? I am. Let me just do this. So this is going to have to sit again for another day or two. I had hoped that that would be it. But for those of you who know, this is the way you fix dings in guitars. You clean out the ding, and then you put super glue in the ding, build it up over the top of the ding, and then you use a blade to scrape away the ding. I don't want to overdo this, just... Now, anybody's watching, this super glue does not stay at that level. Hopefully you can see this, but it doesn't stay at that level. When it seals, it contracts and it'll sink down. So I doubt it in this instance, but I may have to put another layer of super glue on before I scrape away. Right, okay, that's it done, and now it has to sit. I'm probably overthinking this. I probably could have just sanded that down to the epoxy, because the epoxy is sitting about a millimeter below the surface of the wood. And I could easily have sanded that and finished that off, but I just want to have a solid surface on the top of it. So that's it. Back again. Okay, we are now 24 hours later, and the glue is solid, really solid. So I'm going to use my little blazer raid and scrape off the glue down to the surface of the wood. And I won't know if it'll need another coat of glue until I've done that. So just stand by. I'm so hoping that this is the last time that I will have to scrape. I haven't been scraping the wood. I've only brought the wood down to where it used to be. But I'm hoping that this is the last time I'm going to have to do any scraping on the glue. But I won't know that for a second. Now, you have to be very gentle when you're scraping. See, if you scraped hard, you just peel the glue off. So you have to scrape gently till you get, do you see the little bits coming? We're still only at the glue. We're getting very close to being at the wood there. So I'm going to concentrate on it from there. The most important thing to me on this is to make it totally smooth for the playing. The appearance is not really that important. The owner would think the appearance is important, but because he's a professional guitarist, I want this neck to feel rather than look, but to feel almost perfect. Then he won't think about it when he's playing his guitar, he'll just play it. And he won't think, oh, there's a little ding there that's upsetting my playing or whatever, you know. Hopefully he'll let me put a little clip of his latest album on this little video. It's at the end that you need the most patience, because you'd be tempted, I'm nearly finished now, I can just relax. You don't relax. You know, you might be tempted to press harder with the blade or something like that. How are we recording? Are we still recording? Yeah, I think we are. You just have to have patience right to the very end. This is actually a small crack compared to some of the cracks I've had to fix. But it is one of the most awkward cracks because it's along the neck rather than... Let me just feel this. You know, some people might be tempted to sandpaper it and think it's fine, but when you go over sandpaper that's rough, you'll find that the wood is easier to sandpaper than the super glue. See, when you sandpaper it, you're taking bits of the wood off, but you're not taking bits of the sandpaper off. So you've got to get it as smooth as possible. I think I'm going to use some sandpaper now. A block that's used for neck frets. It's a perfectly, where are you? That's a perfectly flat block. and it's on the flat. Right, I'm going to stop there. Right, okay. Now, a little bit of white spirit. You have to stop at some stage. Right, and the camera will help me now because the camera will record the bumps better than I will. So let me see if I see any bumps. By the way, that crack is filled solid. It looks like it's not filled solid, but it's filled solid. Now, I can't see reflective lights on any bumps there. Let me do it this way, go down there with the light. That looks as good as you can get it. Okay, the next stop is just gentle acetone on the outside white part, but nowhere else. Just to take it down a bit, and then some stain, which I'll show you in a second. Acetone, just here. And not on the crack, just on each side of it. Acetone is fierce. It's, what is it? Is it the stuff that the sniffers use? Right, okay. And this is golden oak. And it's going to take about 30 coats of this because this is water-based and I want it to soak in. So, numero uno, camera off, and we'll let that dry and then put another coat and another coat. You cannot feel that at all. It's like the neck never had a crack, but you can see it. And I used stains on it, and I tried to stain it, but it actually looked worse with stains. So what I did is I took the rest of the neck, both sides down, and I sanded that all down to make that whole area lighter, and it looks pretty good. The problem is I would like it to look like brand new, but I can't do that. Now there's a way if you want to hide it. What we do is we spray that whole area and taper it off and spray it, but you're going to hide all the wood then in that case. Personally, I would play this the way it is, and I think in about a year's time that'll all just blend in. The crack will still be seen, or where the crack was will still be seen, but that crack is sealed solid now. Simple bit of tidying up here. The Telecaster old ones have actual screws in them rather than Allen keys, and these aren't rusted in yet, but what I've done is I've taken a little drop of WD-40 in the bottom of this, and I'm using my screwdriver just to put a couple of drops in it to stop them from completely seizing over the ears. I'm not adjusting them, I'm just cleaning them. As you can see, they're quite dirty. And as you'll see from behind, you'll see this little pale coloured, that's the treatment I used called crust. I've used crust, hammerite crust. It converts rust into a sort of ferrite iron, and so that will all go black eventually. It won't do any harm, and it'll keep the appearance that it has, maybe slightly darker than the rust appearance, because we don't want to turn this into some sort of new machine. But at the moment I'm just cleaning and getting this all tidied up, and then I'll clean out that as well. The the scratch, that's a little bit jammed in there, so we'll get that all done. The scratch has been, it's as smooth as a baby's bum now, still visible, but you can't feel it. You can't feel it at all, and that's the main thing. We'll see how it works over the years. Okay, so I'm going to get back to doing this. I fixed the jack plug, cleaned it up, it's working well. They could do with a clean. I must ask them if they look like they really are. I don't know what they are, but they're rotten. Like, so I must give them a clean. But that's what I'm doing, is just protecting it for the future. This one here is gone completely, but it needs to be replaced. These are quite easy to replace, and you can get them anywhere. But I'm not turning them, I'm just cleaning them to make sure they don't go solid. That one, at some stage, sometime, is going to have to come out, because he's not able to adjust that. He won't be able to adjust that. There's no movement in it. Okay, so you can see that one's damaged. You can see the other ones still have some attachment to them. So that one eventually, you might get some, I've got a screwdriver, you might get some movement in it. Okay, I'm going to, big hammer, I'm going to put glue in this and then a few nails just to hold it down, and put my glasses on so I can see it a bit better. Right, how much battery we got left? That says we're okay. So put some glue in here, because I'm going to use the paintbrush to put the glue in there, because I don't want to get the paint on the inside of the... And these corners need some thought. This is the worst corner. This is the worst corner here, because it's fractionalizing and coming apart, and there's nothing left of it almost. So I think it's going to need something around it. This one's not just as bad. You know what might? We're talking about, no, there's not enough wood, I was going to say. But a bracket might help. Do I have brackets? Let's have a look and see. Let's have a look at that there. That wood's rotten. It's going to have strengthener there and there. So switch off the camera for a moment, and then I'll come back to you whenever I've... So it's going to be a Heath Robinson job, because I don't have bolts. I'm going to put that corner piece on, if you can see that. I'm going to screw it on with strong screws. They're going to go through this, but then I'm going to use my little grinder to take off the edges. I'd prefer to use bolts, but I just don't have bolts. So this will be temporary. I will go on to Amazon later and see if I can order anything for these corners, because it'd be nice to keep this case. Maybe you can get brass corner pieces or something like that and put it on. But let's just see how these screw in. This piece of metal will actually help, because it'll stop the case from getting all dented and scrapped like this. Pity they didn't put them on in the first place. Although you can get corner protectors. I must look to see. I think that's good and tight. You can get corner protectors, which I'll see if the owner wants to do that, but he might not want to do that. So believe it or not, that's it, quite strong now. So what I'm going to do is paint rust on this to stop these rusting any further. decking COVID thing. Right, okay, that's it all treated. Now, switch the camera off. Wait for the glues to dry and the thing to settle down. And then we'll go in and grind those screws down. I'm going to go on to Amazon now and see if there's any corner pieces which we can buy here. Maybe we wouldn't want brass, but we might want black metal. So we need 8 of them. Black metal. That'd be the right thing to suit. We'll have to find out from the owner if he wants me to get them for him though. But that there's holding it quite well, the glue. Right, okay, end of it, end of story. Okay, 63 Telecaster. I had it tuned a second ago. Sounds very well, and it's all playing nicely now. There's no crackling. I think I got quite a lot of volume from this guitar, you know. The neck feels lovely. Doesn't feel, I think we'll see what the owner says about the action. He probably will want to bring the action down. But I don't want to bring the action down until I'm sure what he wants. So really I just want to show you that, you know. The frets need a refret job. I think I might be able to do something by scraping the frets, but I'm not going to do that unless he wants me to.